Good morning, everybody. Colin Tansley and Peter Taylor, Risk Watchdogs Live.
Good morning, Colin, and good morning, everybody.
Morning, Peter. I've just been told by StreamYard that we've lost access to Facebook, so we won't be streaming live to the Facebook today. So I'll upload it later. Okay, so we're back again for our weekly update. A few little snippets to try and help you stay safe and keep your awareness up about what's going on in the world. Peter, you're doing this morning.
Yeah. So the purpose of Risk Watchdogs Live is to just share knowledge, to raise awareness, and particularly focused around all types of fraud, crime, and financial crime prevention.
Yeah, super. Education, it's all about keep people aware. Right. So I'm only going to talk about a couple of bits today. In the Cyberbites, or yesterday, because I didn't do it on Monday because it's bank holiday and I wasn't here, there were a few bits and pieces that came out of there. But one thing that struck me was QR codes. And we use them all the time without a lot of people without even thinking. So I'm going to just talk about that. And then a data breach, it doesn't have to be cyber. I think that, again, there's that misunderstanding around that. It's always going to be electronic. I'm just going to give a couple of examples of that. So that's where I'm going to come from today. QR code. So we use them a lot. I mean, I use them to travel on Friday. It's just easy, isn't it? Boarding pass. And they work. But I think the thing that's probably less understood is they're very easy to make yourself. And if people are using for legitimate purposes, you can guarantee that the bad guys and girls will be doing it as well. So if you see a QR code online anywhere, don't think about what you're doing before you scan it, because it could potentially launch something onto your device. It might open a website. And I'll show you something in a minute. But that one, if you scanned it, if you tried it now, it will go straight to the Intellect Group website. So perfectly legitimate, dead easy to set up. And one of the examples that was given, and the piece I was reading, was that we there's this talk about COVID passes, talk about entry to sporting events using these things. So what if you had a bad actor at one of these events that was scanning in your device? They could potentially capture your personal data. So so be very wary of that sort of thing. Somebody come along saying, "Oh, scan this." You don't know what you're doing. You could be releasing your personal data to somebody that doesn't need it, and that could then be used against you. Alternatively, you could launch a malicious code onto your device.
It's been used at football stadiums. I think Old Trafford are using it. So, that's 75,000 potential.
Yeah. You can just see the scenario: somebody dressing up as a steward, and saying, "Oh, here, mate, you need to do this." So I think it's about being aware. It's so easy to do. This is, I've called it "Take Me There," but that's exactly what it does. You can come to a site. It can be a text, an email, a phone, anything you like that's online, and it will just take you to that particular place. So, and you don't know with that sort of the way the code looks what it's going to do. So be really, really careful. So QR codes, just a bit of a security risk. And then talk about data breach came up in the Cyberbites, and I think the example there was about in Northern Ireland, victims of historical abuse had their details circulated inadvertently by way of a newsletter. So that's an example of, albeit the delivery mechanism is electronic, it's not maybe what people think about a data breach. I think people think being hacked is a data breach, which it is, but there's other ways of data being breached as well. And that was a really good example, a really bad one for the victims as well, because who knows, who got to find out that they'd been the victim of abuse. So apparently the compensation for that is about 100K.
I think one thing I've noticed that a few people slip on, not that often, but when they do, it's really bad, is email trails. And email attachments, where you go 20 emails down, you've got really confidential information there because somebody's forwarded an email to staff or to customers. And I do sort of, if I've been having a long conversation with anybody via email, I'll make a point of doing a fresh email. If I'm going to say anything confidential or whatever, so that stuff doesn't go. But I'm conscious of it because I've seen some really bad examples or some really scary examples of email trails.
And not using blind copy, for example. I was a member of a gym, and we all got sent something from the gym, and everybody's email address was in the normal email address field. So, but this one was probably one of the most severe types of data breach, isn't it? This was in the Times on the 10th of August. So leaving details of Afghan staff for the Taliban, it's just horrendous. You just don't know what's going to happen to these people now.
Well, I saw one. It was a little while ago now, where the email trail, when you went to the bottom of it, had a note from a finance director saying that we're now in breach of our financial covenants, and we need to do something to improve profitability. And I'm looking for suggestions. That had gone out to budget holders, and then the budget holders has sent it down to team leaders and teams and everything else. And when you went back to the beginning of it, it had this, basic, something that was really significant. And I think it was, I'm going back to say a few years ago, but I think they were also a PLC with shareholders.
Oh, God.
So you can imagine the consequences. Well, the potential consequences from something like that. So, people are just quite innocently, everybody had forwarded it, forward again.
I don't know. No, it's a really good point.
Company confidential.
And I think Mike, our good friend Mike Roberts, was talking earlier on one of his posts about human error. And it's real. It happens. I think people sometimes do things without thinking, and it is a breach. But
well, they may be innocent, but it doesn't mean that the problem. They may be doing it innocently and in good faith, but it doesn't mean that the problem isn't caused.
No, it's about stopping and thinking before you press that button and checking. Yeah, good, excellent. All right, my friend, over to yourself. So, kept in hindsight, I like that.
I avoided any images because I am non-political and I don't care. Stammers getting a lot of stick because they call him Captain Hindsight. I don't think any of them have got any room to talk about being innovative and sort of helpful with the crisis that we've gone through over the last couple of years from either side of the house or from either house as well. One of the biggest problems I think we have is that C-suite people, those that are on the C-suite, and I've been there myself, aren't listening to the people that are nearer the coalface in terms of problems and issues. And because they can work smartphones and home computers, they're also overrated their IT ability. So obviously you can see the things that I'm saying there is, on the slides, but cybercrime is just organised and industrious. They've recruited like mad over the last 2 years, and the opportunities for them to recruit, they've come out from the dark web. The dark web now has become it isn't necessarily the dark web, it's on the dark web, but it's on the bright web. We've the dark web now has spilled out over to things like Telegram, WhatsApp, Twitter, LinkedIn, and other places. It's become so busy. It's become an adjective rather than a noun for the dark web.
Dark services.
Pardon?
Dark services. I suppose you could say, couldn't you?
The criminals have taken a huge amount of money, but I actually think their biggest asset for the next 5 years is the number of people that they've recruited to either support them, copy them, or to buy the products that they have in terms of crime as a service. So you can actually buy ready-made ransomware systems and with targets and everything else. we've really got to get the message through to the C-suite that not doing something till sort of this time next year could be potentially fatal. Yeah. So there's lots of people going around there, and there's lots of slick salesmen, and I wouldn't include myself in terms of being a slick salesman. But what I am finding, because I do speak to salesmen, I'm always being asked to be a reseller for companies. Yeah. But I find when I ask the reseller any sort of details, technical details, the person that's asking me, they don't understand it themselves. So I think what is really important is, who are you actually listening to? And do they understand the problem that they say they're trying to solve? Are they pitching, or are they sharing information to confirm whether or not you can be a customer? And whether or not they can be a supplier or a vendor for you. And I think that's really, really important, because there is no single silver bullet for cybercrime. There's a suite which can be as full as you like of all different alternatives, but the smart way is to find the fewest things that will give you the most benefit in terms of your security. And as I say there as well, it's start with the basics or build on sand. You know, we can go in and we can sort things out like fraud abuse systems. You know, there's so much that we can do, but are we? You know, at the end of the day, the foundation is your website. You know, has it got a good capacity? You know, are the vulnerable? You know, the vulnerabilities being taken care of? Is there good discipline with the admins and the authorization? And you know, there is so much, and as you've mentioned there as well, as we keep hearing phishing, you know, there are various figures. Is it 70%, 76%, 94% I've seen of cyber attacks begin with email phishing. Well, yeah, but what I'm interested in is how many successful cyber attacks begin with phishing, because you know, it's like, what you're going to do? Well, you send an email, and if that doesn't work, then you do something else. And there's so many other ways that it can be done. But I'll be very cautious of anybody who throws that at you and then tells you they've got a solution, because you know, there's malware through apps. You've shown there the QR codes, remote device takeover, phone takeover, malicious actors, coerced staff. Previous leaks being used, and we're still getting the same old that somebody's work email or access has been gained because they were in the LinkedIn hack 3 or 4 years ago, and they're still using, and they use the same password for that as the company account, or a similar version because they've done the 90-day updates. And people are still, you know, it's happening like this week. It's happening last week. It shouldn't be happening anymore.
Not anymore.
You know.
And I think you make a really valid point there about the C-suite. And I suppose I'm bound to say this, but I just think the salesman or the sales person goes in and convinces somebody to buy something, and they don't really understand what they're buying. They don't understand the threats. Start with a risk assessment first. So we would say this because we offer it, but have a risk assessment to identify what you actually need and what you don't need, and what's going to make you more secure, because each business is different. I remember speaking to a guy who ran a small business here, very small business, and he's persuaded to buy some very expensive dark web monitoring because that was going to solve all his problems. What? You know, without even thinking about training, some of the sort of electronic protection, all that sort of stuff. This was sold to him as going to solve all his problems. I've no idea if it's been hacked, but you know, that's an add-on which you may or may not need. But
well, I think the thing is as well, though, it's easy to throw bricks at the C-suite. But what I'm saying is we shouldn't just be relying on the C-suite. And if we can't convince them, as you said there, is going to them and saying, you know, there's a lot of ransomware about, we're probably going to get attacked. They you know, they need information, they need detail, they need to know how it happens, and you can do that fairly simply and easily. So, you need to share knowledge with them. And I think the other one that I've found, which didn't always make me popular, is be honest with them.
Yeah.
And say, look, I think this is going to happen. I think, but show them a risk assessment. This is what the impact's likely to be. This is why we think it's that degree of risk, and this is what's happened elsewhere. So it isn't just about anybody, in the C-suite or not in the C-suite. It's about giving them, know your C-suite, but also give them the information that they need as briefly as you can. The one giving them a 50-page assessment or asking them to open a link somewhere isn't going to do you much good.
No. All right, we're about our time, matey, so we better.
Yeah.
Who's doing this? Me or you? I can't remember.
You do that one.
All right. So, as we've just said there, we do risk assessments. There's a broad range of us, but specifically for what we've been talking about, both fraud and cyber. We can help with CPD certified training and e-learning, and obviously consultancy as well. We both do that collectively and individually. Your bit.
And let's be careful out there.
Yeah, brilliant. Thanks, Peter. Thank you very much for listening,
Colin.
everybody. We'll be back this same time, same channel next week, and I'll get Facebook sorted out.